right, my dear BIBLEin365 brothers and sisters, this is a good one. We have arrived at the prophet Nahum, and that's what we say. Many of you might say Nahum, but we say Nahum, and it's a very, very interesting few chapters that you are about to read. Now, I think the best thing to do is to give you a little bit of history about what Nahum was all about, and of course, we don't know a lot about him personally. Of course, it's interesting. He was somebody that we know to be a prophet that ministered to Nineveh, believe it or not. Now, there were a few other prophets that ministered to Nineveh. Of course, there was Jonah, who around 770 BC, he prophesied to the Ninevites. And of course, the result of his prophecy was the spiritual awakening and repentance of a whole city, which was pretty amazing, and in essence, very likely a whole nation. And then, of course, you have Nahum, who, of course, ministered roughly 650 BC, so about 120 years later, and his message was, in essence, just a message of doom. That's the guy we're talking about here. You've got Zephaniah, who undoubtedly, and we'll be talking about Zephaniah a little bit later, was a contemporary of Nahum and also predicted Nineveh's destruction, and he touches up on this a little bit. And of course, interestingly enough, Isaiah, who preceded a good majority of these prophets, also predicted the destruction of Assyria in Isaiah chapter 10. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see about all of these guys and what they were about. And it is interesting when you look at the story of Nahum and actually who he was. There's not really a lot that we know about him, right? His name means comfort, and we'll come back to that in just a second. And he is identified as the Elihoshite, which there is some debate about where this place is. Some people say that this is around Mosul in Iraq. I do not believe that. I think that's a kind of a bogus conclusion, although there are some strong arguments that can be made that we are talking about the Galilee region. Now, if it is the Galilee region, then it would make sense because there is a city in the Galilee region called Capernaum. Now, this is interesting because what does Capernaum have to do with Nahum? It has everything to do with Nahum. Keep this in mind. When you put those words together, remember, when we speak in Hebrew, Hebrew sounds very different than English. There are certain pronunciations that we don't carry over from the Hebrew language. Like, for example, here's one that a lot of you know, and that's the J sound. We don't carry the J sound over into the Hebrew language. And so you might know a very common word in Hebrew, which is Jerusalem, right? The city of peace. The way we would say it in Hebrews, we would say Yerushalayim. So very different. And that's because the way we take on pronunciations in Hebrew is very different to how we would do it in English, because the transliteration doesn't always completely carry over. So when you say Capernaum in English or Nahum in English, what you're actually saying in Hebrew is Capernaum, which means the city of Nahum, or the city of comfort, or even can take on the city of repentance. Very likely it could be actually the demarcation for the actual city that Nahum lived in. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So when you hear the word Capernaum or Capernaum, you know that that is the Hebrew reference to the city of Nahum, and it is interesting. Anyway, as you get into this book, you're going to realize it is, in essence, 3 chapters of some very harsh condemnation against Nineveh. Now, the one thing I do want you to pay attention to is I want you to look at the very specific details provided in Nahum that really, in a very descriptive way, shows what would eventually happen to Assyria and, of course, its capital. And, of course, as all the other introductions that I've done, I do have teaching through Nahum. You can find it at CalvaryChapelSignalHill.com. You can find it on JamesKaddis.com. You can find it on YouTube. You could find it on LightOnTheHillRadio.com. There's a lot of different places you can go. You can even download our app. It's all available to you. And this is going to be another great adventure through a minor prophet. Minor only because of the size of his writings, but not minor because of his message. There was nothing minor about the minor prophets. but you're going to love it. All right. So we've got a lot more coming. Can't wait to give you, we got a ton of introductions for the month of September. And you guys are just going to be totally blessed. We're very excited about what's coming. And we're going to do our very, very best to just encourage you guys in your faith, that you might grow as you read the word. You're going to get a great reward from it. All right. God bless you guys. Enjoy reading the prophet Nahum from Nahum. God bless you.